And those promises are everywhere on the internet right now. I just built a successful marketing campaign that generated 100 leads, and it took me 45 minutes. Download this and it's going to solve your marketing problems, basically. And so I think it's a false prophet from a sense that we think there's a prompt out there, there's a tool out there, there's something that we can just plug into our existing business and it's going to help us win. And that may or may not be the case. It sort of depends. It depends on what's already maybe exists at the underlying layer. And that's where I'm kind of saying you might want to pause for a second before you invest a bunch of money or try a bunch of tools that maybe don't cost a bunch of money, but cost you a bunch of time and a bunch of failures, only to realize that's not actually getting you to where you need to go.
So if anybody's watching this and not just listening to it in their car, they're going to know that there's some cowboy hats going on here. And that's because we've got a special cowboy in the room, Curtis Hayes.
We do have some cowboys here.
Yeah.
You look good in the hat.
Thanks. You too.
Yeah.
You too. You've really pioneered it here in the Southeast Michigan area.
It's part of my identity now.
Well, you are the host or co-host, and we've got to give Tom Nixon credit as well. You're co-host of Bullseyes and Bullhorns. Bullhorns and Bullseyes.
That's correct.
Bullhorns and Bullseyes.
That's it. Yep.
And every time you do it, you wear the hat.
I wear the hat.
Or a hat.
So about the same time that we started the podcast, I had moved out into the country, bought a truck, bought a tractor. I've got 2 ranch dogs, Australian Shepherds. We've got chickens. I needed boots, got the boots. And I just figured the next logical step was to get a hat. And so I got the hat. And then we were 3 episodes into the podcast. And the hat was sitting behind me. And I was like, why don't I just put it on? So I put it on. And it just stuck. So now I wear it everywhere.
But you're no poser either, right? Like if I show up with this, I'm kind of a poser. You've got the farm. You grew up on a farm though.
I did grow up on a farm.
So
in Illinois, not in Texas.
Right. So
Yep.
you're Midwest country legit.
I'd like to think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
trying to get back to my roots.
Okay.
I tell you what though, wearing the hat, I strike more conversations with people now than I did without the hat.
Really?
I'm out at a restaurant with the hat on. Gentleman comes over, sits down at the bar. Love the hat. Are you from Texas? Nope. I'm from here in Michigan. Well, I'm from Illinois, but been here in Michigan for 22 years. But it strikes up conversations. In church on Sundays, I probably get 5 or 6 different people who come over and talk to me.
Can you wear it during church?
So I wear it all the way into the service area, and then I take it off during service and then put it back on. But in the lobby, I mean, so many people say hi, come over, shake my hand, love the hat.
Conversation starter.
It's a conversation starter. I love it.
Great.
So, yeah.
Fantastic. Do you have a special Hayes brand that you're putting on everybody that comes in the house?
I don't. No.
Okay.
No.
I mean, that's just a thought.
We might work our way there. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We're trying to come up with a homestead name.
You go? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Well, so Curtis Hayes also owns a company called Kaleidoscope, and it's a digital marketing agency. And we've worked together for a really long time. And I think our wives would say that we talk on the phone a lot, and now especially a lot about AI. And that's all we seem to talk about. That's all our text chains is. There's nothing salacious in there. It's all AI related. So thanks for all the advice you bring me.
Every time I'm on the phone with you, my wife, who can hear me in the other room, knows who I'm talking to.
Yeah.
Because our conversations must be different than any other conversations I have with other colleagues. But he says,
funny.
yep, you're talking to Matt, aren't you?
Mm-hmm. So, obviously we have a lot in common. You kind of grew up working in IT, and then you transformed through certain metamorphosis to becoming a marketing guy.
I did.
And now with this most recent transformation, an AI marketing guy. So give us a little bit of your background for anybody that doesn't know you.
Yeah, quick history. My early teens and 20s, I worked in banking. I worked a bit in manufacturing and distribution, ended up with a Fortune company. I learned enterprise IT. I developed a bank's 16 branch bank's help desk during Y2K. So that's kind of how I got started back when everybody was panicking in 1999 that the whole grid was going to go down once we hit January.
Did you have faith it wasn't going down?
Yeah, it was all bogus. But our network engineers at the branch were so busy updating servers, updating machines, they had nobody to run a help desk. So myself and another college student started their help desk. I built a help desk platform inside of Access to log and generate tickets, and we worked out of that for the next sort of 9 months and carried that into the start of my career, ended up with a Fortune company, did some great stuff there, and then started consulting here in Michigan. And that was at the boom of everybody getting email on their, well, it started with your Palm and then BlackBerry and then Apple, and everybody wanted an Exchange server and Microsoft. So this is before the Gmail workspace days and the Office 365 when everything was on-prem. And so built my career up in there, but mostly helping kind of sales and service type people. And so then when the CRM came out, HubSpot, Salesforce, our customers needed help with those tools. And so that was kind of the journey over into supporting the CRM, which kind of then led me into marketing. And as marketing became more sophisticated from a technology perspective, I wanted to learn the technology on that side. Always kind of being a systems guy, but the systems just sort of evolved into my clients' needs being on the marketing side.
Well, and I would think that marketing also was a good platform for you to use with IT. It moves at a little bit of a different pace, right? Where IT, if you know what works on a network, that works for a handful of years. Marketing is a little bit different, where what might work this year doesn't work next year. And so you're constantly evolving. Did you notice a shift between the two of those? One being kind of a little bit more steady Eddie, and then the other being like, whoa, this is a little bit more dynamic.
Yeah, there are way more variables in marketing, and there are way more outside factors that can affect the success of your marketing. For example, you could wake up tomorrow in a Google Ads campaign and the algorithm has changed, or in Meta on Facebook or Instagram and the algorithm's changed. So it's changing rapidly, and you're having to always stay up to date, whether it's, organic search, whether it's AI, and now everybody's leaving organic search and they're doing search in ChatGPT and other AI platforms. So it's a constant evolution, and you're constantly trying to stay up with what's happening from a technology perspective.
You're doing a lot in e-commerce as well?
We do a little bit in e-commerce. My background is mostly in the lead gen space, so it's either lead gen B2B or lead gen business to consumer.
Got it.
We do work with some e-commerce clients if they're a good fit. Yep.
Perfect. I want to talk about your most recent post that you made, which is kind of one of the things that we've been geeking out on, and it's a little bit biblical sounding, or maybe even end of time sounding in some ways. But you talk about the false prophet that AI can be, and I think what you're trying to do is give us a warning that this is a tool. It needs to be used with some levels of care, and it can be very powerful. And depending on what you are looking at it doing, if you don't do it right, it can grow something really poorly. If you do it right, it can grow something really powerful.
Yep. So
let's use your words.
Well, if you log into X or you go on YouTube and you just happen to search any of these tools, whether it's Claude or OpenAI, Grok, anything, you're going to see all kinds of posts like God mode unlocked, new AI prompts. I just built a successful marketing campaign that generated 100 leads and it took me 45 minutes. Download this and, it's going to solve your marketing problems basically. And those promises are everywhere on the internet right now. And so I think it's a false prophet from a sense that we think that there's a prompt out there, there's a tool out there, there's something that we can just plug into our existing business and it's going to help us win. And that may or may not be the case. It sort of depends. It depends on what's already maybe exists at the underlying layer. And that's where I'm kind of saying you might want to pause for a second before you invest a bunch of money or try a bunch of tools that maybe don't cost a bunch of money, but cost you a bunch of time and a bunch of failures, only to realize that's not actually getting you to where you need to go.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely got the siren's call to it where there's things you start to play with and you start to upload documents to or upload transcripts to, and it becomes very intelligent. What I've noticed is that I'm getting lost in the shuffle of all those files. So those files live originally on my computer. I'm uploading them to the Anthropic or ChatGPT cloud, and then I'm almost getting lost in where the original versions of this went. And so, talk to us about that, about the kind of just almost the scope creep, or what would you call it, like file creep or data creep? What's a word that maybe people are using around that?
It's chaos, honestly. I mean, and even AI can't sort it out. I think you even expressed this with me of, I'm trying to train my ChatGPT to learn and understand and memorize the things that I'm telling it, and it's not. And that's because of the context window. Your context window.
Well, that was me two weeks ago, right? So
has it changed a little now?
Oh, yeah. Now I know now I know the memory structure, how it works and what it needs.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are stuck there where they start a chat and they give it some information, they upload some documents, they maybe try to build out a prompt or something because they've seen a prompt online. That might work from a short term, but then they go and they stay in that same chat window. And you have this huge context window of all of these chats that maybe you've been having in a string over the last month or two. Well, there's maybe 10 to 20 back and forths that really the AI can hold on to in that context window. It can't hold on to the whole entire thing. And so you're losing relevancy to maybe some good context there that it needs to be grounded in because you're disorganized with your conversation. It's like if you and I sat here and just rambled on forever, at some point we're going to have some tangents, we're going to go in some different directions, and we're going to lose our way. Mm-hmm. And it's very easy for AI to lose its way if you're not grounded in something first.
I mean, because it is using resources, right? It's using memory resources and storage resources, and for $20 a month or whatever somebody's investing in it, there's a company on the back end of it who's either subsidizing that or trying to make a buck on it. And it can only hold on to so much memory that it can access in a reasonable amount of time. Correct.
Or you connect via API and you use tokens, and then every time you do a chat, you just send 10,000 tokens over. Essentially, a token is like a chunk of a word. Mm-hmm. So if you take hamburger, hamburger is going to be 3 tokens for one word. And so if you do a chat with a huge prompt, that entire prompt goes over as one transaction. And, if there's a ton of words in that, you just paid for that whole thing when maybe you didn't need to. Maybe in that single conversation, you only need a small part of it, get a response. Now it could chunk a different piece and go on to the next. So imagine this huge, long conversation you've had now, this big context window that every time you sort of go back and forth with that LLM, it has to parse through that whole entire thing. Mm-hmm. I mean, we haven't gotten to terminal yet, but just to compare the differences, if I'm in like a standard UI chat window versus in terminal, it's like 3 times the token use and 3 times the length of time for it to reason and give me a response than it does just straight in terminal in a well-organized space.
So when you're talking to business owners, I know what they're telling me, but when you're talking to business owners, what is the number one thing they're bringing to you regarding AI?
Well, the number one they're bringing me is, I think, a frustration that they're not getting the output they want. So they're having conversations, they're getting an average output. Mm-hmm. So it's decent, but it's not necessarily enough to help them feel comfortable in a decision they want to make, or it's not helping them get organized enough around a business. I think the other major problem we have right now is, you say have an organization of 100 employees, 80 of them are using AI, and likely all 80 are in a different tool. And so you have no consistency, you have no coherence of output from those because this person's using ChatGPT, this person's in Claude, this person's in Google Gemini. And even if you put them all in the same tool, if they're not all using the same context window that starts where their conversation starts, they're all getting different outputs. And so I think that's the biggest thing that we're being faced with right now is how do we enable businesses to have single source of truth for their employees? So when I ask a question, it's grounded in something and gives me an accurate answer.
So what are you doing with that as it relates to marketing? Because I would imagine that in marketing, this is an easy one for people to understand. If there's 5 of us in a room and we're all from Kaleidoscope, we all might describe Kaleidoscope differently.
Yep.
Right. So what do you do? How are you leveraging AI to make that message homogenized, cohesive, across those 5 different people?
Yeah. So
and then of course, beyond 5 people, right?
Yeah.
5 people might be able to be in a room, but 500 maybe can't be.
Right. Yeah. This has been a process we've been working on for the last year that we feel like we finally got it in a good place, which is essentially a diagnosis of their marketing and to put that all through a pipeline of agents that can get us to what I'm calling a brand guardian, which essentially can enforce rules of the brand. So things like voice and tone, and there's basic things like that you could find in, say, a Claude, where you could get a Claude skill that could build a brand voice for you that has voice and tone, and we say these things, we don't say these things, those types of basic things. Layered on top of that, though, is more our methodologies and our philosophies behind marketing as well, which is a hierarchy of how we think at a psychological level you should be doing marketing. Marketing isn't just about saying the right things. It's actually about motivating a person to want to make a purchase, to actually connect with the individual on the other side. What we're finding in marketing today is most of marketing, and there's an easy test to do this if you want to do it on your own website, is go on your website and see how many times you say we or our, that you use first person words. We call that we call that mirror marketing. Mirror marketing is when all you're doing is talking about yourself. And it's a natural thing that we do as human beings, especially when you get into a business and it's your business and you're proud of your business. I've built many websites in my day, and I've been in many meetings with graphic designers. And the worst thing that they hear in a graphical design meeting is, can you make our logo bigger? Because it's all about you. It's not about the customer, right? So marketing is all about the customer. So what we want you to do is actually, let's turn those mirrors into windows. Let's see this through the prism of your customer. What pain point do they have? What problem are you solving for them? How do we connect with them? You're familiar with StoryBrand, that type of framework where we start with a pain point, then figure out your positioning, what makes you different in the marketplace. And then we get to what we call your what's. This is what we do. This is how long you've been in business. All those, your features, advantages, benefits. We end with that, but we first have to start with, why do people even buy from you in the first place? What is that? What is that pain you solve for?
Sure.
So that's all built into the process that we built now, so that in the end, you don't only get a brand voice, but you get like a philosophy for actually how this brand is going to market. And so then anytime you ask a question like, create me a social media post for X, Y, and Z, it's going to do that using the framework and position something so that it actually, we'd call it in social media like a hook. What's the hook? What's the message that's going to resonate with someone? And so there's some rules, some guidelines in that can help something hopefully have a better chance of having success when you put it out there.
Want to use us as a little bit of an example of some of that, some of the maybe the outsmart chaos to the budget to the this and then that. Would you be okay sharing a little bit more of that?
If you're okay with that.
Yeah.
I mean, can I put you on the spot? What did you learn going through the process with us?
The we and our. Yeah, certainly. It's have you ever been through Toastmasters?
I haven't been through it. No.
Okay. Are you familiar with it?
I am familiar.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in Toastmasters, everybody kind of plays a different role in each meeting. And one of the roles that somebody has to play is always the and ah counter. So it's basically filler words. And so as soon as you're elected as that person for the first time, you're so judgy. You're judging the person who's doing their speech and, that person's used 10 ums and ahs and all these little different fillers. And then when it's your turn to go up there, it's the only thing you can hear yourself saying is those filler words. And you go, oh shit, I said, no, that, and you're like, you're back on your heels because it's so front of mind for you. You can't even really talk. It's funny. And so, when we went through that exercise ourselves, it's going, and then every document I read of ours, I go,
there it is again.
Us, darn it.
Mm-hmm.
Only if it's at the right time, then it's okay.
Yep.
So what you walked us through was look, the ultimate goal is to help others accomplish their missions through technology. And that's our company mission statement.
Yep.
And so obviously we outsmart chaos through doing so. And then you kept asking more and more questions. And really the thing that becomes the prevalent item as it relates to technology is, do you have all the right stuff? Well, no. Okay. So if you don't have all the right stuff, Mr. Customer, why is that? Well, we don't have a budget for it. Okay. Have you ever created a budget? No. Has anybody ever walked you through what is necessary in a normal to high functioning IT department? No. Okay. So what is your budget? Well, last year we spent, and so then what happens is that the de facto budget is, what did we spend last year plus a couple of surprises? It tends to be the budget for this year. And there's no sophistication behind it in terms of what's the business trying to do? Oh, we're going to onboard 10 new employees this year. Okay, well, we need to be thinking about that because right there is a different level of spend and a different level of technology needs and resources. But what else is going on? Oh, we're going to open another location. Oh, we're going to close 2 locations. Oh, we're going to, and you name it, or we're moving into a different market. We're going to be selling to a different industry. Oh, now all of a sudden we need cybersecurity compliance. You name it.
Yeah. So it moved you from selling technology to now you're selling an operating system. You guys have a process behind how you guys work with your customers, and you sell to that process by first diagnosing and understanding where they're going. How does IT fit into that? And then speak to that, not speak to all the features and the technology, which they don't even understand.
Correct.
And that, if you're leading with all of that, you're just speaking right over them. Really, what you're doing is speaking to that mirror, because you're speaking a language that is a reflection of you and what you believe and understand. It's not a reflection of their reality. When you can speak to their reality, now all of a sudden you're connecting with them, you're creating community with them, you're problem solving with them. Now they want to be a part of what you stand for. And the technology is just the technology. Frankly, it doesn't matter because, and as you know, that might change in a year anyway.
Sure.
So why sell the technology?
And they need it regardless, right? If you're going to be in business, you need Office or Google Suite.
Right.
There's no real magic there. If you're trying to use email, you need a device to use it on, whether it's your phone, laptop, or some other combination of more than one of those things.
Right.
So yeah, the technology is very much secondary, and it's building clear pictures, building clear pathways for folks.
Yep. Is it easier talking with clients now? I mean, you've always had that ability to kind of connect, I think ask a lot of questions.
I think for me, it's similar, but I think for the team, I think it's creating a paradigm shift, and I think it's what happened to me was a couple of years ago. I was meeting with a friend of mine who sat back in his chair and he kind of like laughed at me. I said, "What are you laughing at?" He goes, "You turned into one of them." I go, "One of what?" He says, "You just used 3 acronyms. You didn't even realize it." And I said, "Oh, geez." I said, because I started out as a non-technology person. And so that was always what I would say was my benefit is that I don't think in acronyms. I think in business first. And so he called me out on that. And I said, "Oh my gosh, I didn't even realize that I was using that to me sounded like new common nomenclature." Right. And it was not to the average
That's an interesting
business owner
realization, because you're very successful at selling and connecting with people and making relationships and those types
of
things.
That one thumped me on the nose.
Yeah. Now I'm talking either over people or they don't understand, and
Correct.
Then they're just tuning out.
Yeah. You have to use their words. And the the language that they speak in,
Yep.
right? And
Yep.
so there's just no question.
So what we want to do is we want to take this context that you have now and then empower the rest of the people in your organization with that context, right? So that's ideally the goal, is to say, first, let's ground in a system. What is it we're saying? How are we saying it? What are the rules that we need to live by when we're putting, at least from a marketing perspective, something out into the world? And that's going to very closely relate to how sales is selling as well. There needs to be alignment between marketing and sales. And so now you give those people access to these tools where they could say, sure, how do I create a blog post to speak to the customer? It's even more powerful when you, as you've seen, you have a meeting transcript from a sales meeting. You put that in and you diagnose and say, well, how did this meeting go? Did I say the right things? Can you give me feedback? How do I set up an email to reply? And you have this whole new unlock of now almost kind of like having a consultant sitting next to you, or at the very least, somebody inside the organization who understands all these rules, who's now coaching and mentoring you to help you see things in a different way. Because our natural tendency is going to go back to that mirror. And we're going to speak, we're going to write that email, those types of things, because we're in our head. But we can kind of see some things differently and see it through the customer's eyes. Now, like I said, we can turn that mirror around, turn it into a window, and hopefully reach the people we're trying to reach on the other side.
How are you saying that to a CEO or a business leader who's basically saying, Curtis, I already feel like I'm behind on AI. I need to get there. And they're coming to you and saying, AI, are you slowing them down first to change that to something else?
We're trying to. Yep. So I call it marketing drift. The thing that we're seeing right now is you're either having algorithm changes, you're having technology changes, you've got personnel changes, you've got an agency that's not working, so you're blaming the agency and you're changing the agency. You had a goal in mind, and maybe at some point 3-5 years ago things were working, but these small little changes are sending you off course. And you just plugging in a new variable without first grounding yourself in what is the system. Like, the system is the variable you want to change, not the technology, not new AI, not a new agency. That's just going to continue to keep you off course. So until you figure out your systems and then feed your systems into AI, now you have the opportunity for AI to be an amplifier of something that's grounded in truth and a direction of where you're going, and not just what is essentially the internet average. I mean, that's what AI is. You can build a campaign in AI that's going to be maybe just as good as 3 of your competitors. But if it's not uniquely yours, what's the point of doing it? Because it's likely not going to land on the other side.
You told me a story the other day about a customer coming to you and saying, my current marketing agency stinks. And you pumped the brakes pretty hard on that and did some explaining and some questioning. Is that along the same lines of what you're talking about here?
Well, yeah, I think if you can't answer the question, why do people buy from you? So I'll ask this question on a call. Do you know why people buy from you? And if your answer is sort of commodity driven, we have the best price, we have this or whatever, that I know right there, we first have to work on messaging. You don't truly understand your customer. And so if we could just pause, and the great thing about AI now is we could do a lot of that research. We can have a bunch of really good conversations with you, and more importantly, some of your customers. We can synthesize all that data down using AI, and then we could build you something really quick that is at least grounded in your customer's reality that we could start working from. But yeah, if you don't do that first, then you're just going to switch over to another agency, putting money on a broken system that's just going to continue to bleed you dry. That you never get to that economic North Star that you're wanting to get to, which is growth, profitability, whatever that looks like. And that needs to be communicated to the agency, whoever you're working with, and do a full diagnostic of everything that's happening and really understand what is it that's working and what's not. It might actually not be marketing that's broke. It could be sales that's broke. Like, if you're not looking at the right numbers, if you don't fully diagnose everything that's happening, then you really don't know.
Sure. You when you said the word spending, it made me think about the fact of the some words from what I don't want to call them naysayers, but the people who are at least being cautious about investing in AI or things that are AI driven. What I've heard as feedback is, I'm not sure if I want to invest money in this because it'll be obsolete in a couple of weeks. And I think you and I both know that the word obsolete might not be the word that I would choose, but it would be different, right? We've looked at, there's been things that we've used even in Claude just over the last few weeks where we were using some outside tools and now all of a sudden it's built into the model. Where's the market going, do you think there? And do you think people are risking, overspending early when they could wait it out?
Potentially, yeah. I think fragmentation across your organization and using lots of different tools without first getting them centralized, it can be costly. I would start, and this is where I see the industry going right now, is just to start by documenting your processes, your systems, and get those into simple, flat text files, what they would call Markdown files. So these MD files are essentially text files that have markup within them, headings, bullets, those types of things, but they're universal to all AI. If you're in ChatGPT right now and you start a chat and it gives you a reply and you just hit the copy paste button to copy it so you can paste it into another document, you're copying Markdown. That's in the chat windows already. So AI is built on Markdown. It knows how to read it, and it's giving you responses in it. It's just cleaned up in the UI to look nice for you, but
sure.
It's in Markdown.
So when you do the copy and then the paste, you'll see that it's actually it almost looks like code, but it's very legible to the
it's a very simple
to the
code.
layperson.
Yep. So you start, if you can start by documenting everything in Markdown in simple text documents. So you could just take a text document that's .txt and rename the file name. You can rename it to .md. It's now a Markdown file.
Mm-hmm.
You can download from Google Workspace any Google Workspace doc, and now gives you the download option to download as Markdown.
Okay.
So all the formatting is there. You're just stripping out all the HTML and formatting stuff that's with normal documents. It just adds to bloat. So you've got nice, clean documents. What's nice about that is it becomes portable. So if the tool changes, the system changes, what's not going to change is a simple folder structure with files in it. That if you're well organized in a folder system, just like you would be on a server, like if you're with Dell today and you want to switch to HP, I don't think you would want to do that, but
I've been hearing a lot lately about the knock. When an employee knocks on your office door and says, "Got a minute?" and you immediately know it's some sort of IT incident. But Oxium IT can help. Whether you're having a problem, need consulting, an upgrade, or a managed IT approach, they focus on preventing cyber attacks and proactive solutions that deliver results. My friend Matt Loria and everyone at Oxium are ready to help before or after you get the knock. Visit Oxium.com and let Oxium IT help you outsmart chaos.
You could pick up the folder system and you could drop it onto another server. Or if we're in Google, we could bring down the folder system, we could drop it into, Office with SharePoint or whatever, and everything moves over, right? Same is going to be true for AI, that you can take that folder structure, move it, it becomes portable. So when you go and switch AI, maybe get GitHub, sync all those documents up into GitHub, you can share it with team members. There's a lot. It just makes it really versatile.
Mm-hmm. When you said GitHub, the first one a word came to mind to me, which was cybersecurity. What are people underestimating about cybersecurity as it relates to AI? All these files, all these systems, and then of course all that creep of you gave the example of the client where 80 people are using 80 different versions or just at least instances, not tying things together.
And that's potentially a huge leak for sure, because you don't know what they're putting into that system and you don't have it necessarily grounded in something. I mean, security is a big concern. And I mean, that's I think where companies like Oxium comes into play, that you can provide that governance that the rest of us, cowboys need to have because we're going to be a little reckless out there. And so we need that oversight, honestly, because we need to have playgrounds we can work in. We need to be innovating and developing, but at the same time, the organization needs to be protected. And so I think, there's a lot of this simple stuff you can do without exposing your organization. Certainly there's going to be IP in there, especially if you're building your processes and your systems and those types of things. That's how you operate. That's going to have your methodologies and your frameworks and those types of things in there. So you want to protect that stuff. If GitHub isn't the right place for you, there's likely going to be other tools and those types of things you could potentially use as an organization. And I would consult a cybersecurity company, in that case.
Or someone at the cybersecurity company, not me on this particular topic. Yeah, this one is, when I was in the sandbox with Claude Cowork and Claude for Chrome, right, and the plugins and how this can actually go and control your computer, right?
Yep.
It's the things that you have in your browser extension are now available to Anthropic. So if you've got your password keeper there, if you've got a shortcut to your bank there, whatever it might be, it can leverage that. So there's definitely a lot of concerns that maybe if it's one person and it's contained, it's not that big of a deal, and depending on what their access to the systems is. But when you have everybody in the organization tooling around with it, it's a big risk.
Yep. And if you're a larger organization, there's some tools out there that you can look into that they're gonna cost a little bit more to get set up and do, but they're going to provide that governance, that security, single sign-on, connected into your rest of your systems and those types of things to keep you protected.
You bet. You I think that you had laid this out, and tell me if this wasn't you. There's a myth, a story, a thesis, an objection, context, and then practical. Do you remember breaking things down like that?
I don't.
Okay. Well, my AI did.
Okay.
So
let's hear
it. It took your document about the false prophet of AI, and it said, okay, so the myth is that AI is treated like a magical savior, but it can also scale confusion.
And that's why you've got to ground it in some systems first. So what I would say is give it coherence first.
The story is AI and Curtis both have IT roots, a diagnosis mindset, and that's what actually shapes how you see marketing and AI.
So I would say diagnosis before delivery, right? So in IT, let's say somebody can't get to the internet. You get a call on the help desk. I can't get to the internet. Will you reset the firewall for me? Is the IT person going to go and reboot the firewall and then affect everybody else in the building?
Right.
No.
So
we're forced in IT to diagnose first. Yet in marketing, where I've been for the last 15 years, somebody calls and says, Google's not working. Let's switch to Meta. And that's our immediate response is to go. It's not to diagnose what might be broken first and figure out, well, is it really Google or is it a different system? And I think we're missing that in a lot of areas of business where we're not diagnosing the problems and we think a tool, a shift in direction or something is going to fix our problem when we've got to diagnose and make sure we understand what the real problem is first before we reboot or buy a new server or whatever, because it might just be, did you check to see if it was plugged in?
Right.
My network cable came unplugged. I tripped on it.
Right. And instead, if we didn't do that, we reboot the firewall. Everybody in the company goes down for 20 minutes or whatever it takes to reboot. And it could have just been, look over there and see if the
and it becomes extremely costly, doesn't it? And marketing right now is becoming completely or overly costly to a lot of businesses because they're not hitting the bullseye. They're throwing darts, they're shooting a gun or whatever, and they're doing it completely blind. And they're just throwing money away, honestly. And I'm just saying, hey, pause for a sec. Let's diagnose. Let's make sure your conversion tracking is working. Let's make sure your CRM is receiving the proper data. Let's close the loop between sales and marketing. And once we have a complete picture of everything that's happening and we understand your customer and why they buy from you, now we can say, here's what's working and what's not, and then dial the specific levers. This happened with a specific client of mine where we weren't growing. And it didn't matter how much more money we put into the advertising, he wasn't growing. And so as costs rose, this is sort of this drift, and revenue's not growing, that became a greater gap from a profitability perspective. Well, it ended up being his sales team. And what he realized was the intake process of phone calls that were coming into the business were not being handled properly, were not being routed to the salespeople properly, and there was a huge ball being dropped. The unlock for that was getting into the IVR, so the call system, a transcribe tool, so that he could listen to phone calls and see what was happening, and then got his team properly trained. They moved from a 5% close rate on every lead to a 10 to 12% close rate. So when you double your close rate from a sales perspective, what does that do from a profitability and revenue perspective? We didn't touch a single dial on the marketing side.
Interesting.
So
he could have, as we said before, he could have just fired the marketing agency.
Yep.
And gone with somebody else.
Yep.
And maybe never got to that diagnosis.
But he was open to letting us see the whole picture from beginning to end, analyze every piece of the process, and then bring visibility to that so we could all look at it. Nobody was holding anything close to themselves, afraid of what might come out of it. I mean, true accountability can't be afraid of what the data shows.
Right.
And so once we got a system where we could everyone was accountable to the numbers, then we could see what was true. What was reality? Not the reality we wanted to create for ourselves, but what was truth. And once we saw that, we knew the dial. It became actually a very functional relationship. There's dysfunction a lot of times in relationships where you're not sharing the data, you're keeping stuff close to yourself and not sharing with the other party. Or it could be inside of an organization where sales and marketing aren't talking to each other, or delivery's not talking into sales, whatever it might look like. So when you get that clarity, it's like, oh, well, let's work on this together. Nobody needs to blame anybody. It was all like, how do we solve this problem?
For sure. But then that goes back to your thesis earlier, which was, AI is an amplifier. If the system's broken, you drift faster. So in that example there, if you would have just poured more gas on the flame and said, let's spend more in marketing, or let's use an AI bot to do more marketing for us of the same way, had you not fixed the root issue, which was how the sales team was interacting, then that would have just amplified it. And so I think that goes back to, again, what your main point in the article was that you wrote, which was, or would you call that an op-ed? It was
a bit. Yeah.
It's opinion grounded in some fact.
I mean, I do feel like there's a bit of a reformation going on right now in the world of marketing. And there's so many people who are getting into it who don't really know what they're doing. And frankly, I didn't know what I was doing in it until recently. And there was somebody I saw recently who said, who's maybe has a 30-year career in marketing. Bill Harper is his name. You can find him on LinkedIn. He said on a podcast, in my career, in my 30-year career, I've noticed that most people don't truly understand what marketing is until about year 15. And when I heard that line, I was at about year 15. And I had just started to figure it out, that marketing wasn't all these tools and algorithms and all this other stuff that I thought it was. It's actually grounded in psychology. That is the framework of sales and marketing, is grounded in psychology. And that was the unlock for me. Then what I layered on top of that was my systems background. That, okay, if it's grounded in psychology, we can still build a system on top of psychology. It doesn't have to just be creativity and messaging and all this stuff. There is all these algorithms and systems and CRMs and all this stuff. So how do we create a psychology foundation and then build data and systems on top of that to help a client
I think you're
get to where they want to go? You're
just going, hey, this is back to basics. This is people. And what you're, I know your ethics, right? So you're not trying to leverage psychology in some underhanded way. You're just trying to leverage it in the way of, if I know this is good for someone, I need to make sure that they see it in a certain light and that they're able to then take action upon it.
Yeah. Well, we've heard the phrase, people buy from people they know, like, and trust. And who likes to hang out with somebody that only talks about themselves?
Sure.
And if that's what your website and your marketing does, is talk about yourself, how do you expect to actually connect? So the psychology is actually pretty simple when you think about it.
I loved what you said too about the generic prompts that they give an average. They give an average response, an internet average, essentially. And then you said context creates, what did you say? Context creates business specific truth, but there was something we had talked about the other day where it was content was king. And now
that's what it used to be.
And now context is king.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think about that and you go back to the, why do people know, like, and trust? You do business with people that you know, like, and trust. Typically you've allowed yourself to get to a contextual level, right? To say, I'm going to open up the kimono a little bit more and answer that question. Why do you do it this way? How did that come to be? And now when you know context, you're not sitting there going, oh, well, you're like when the builder comes to your house, or the carpenter. Oh, the guy before me, what an idiot that guy before me was. You don't think there was some context of why he did it like that? Maybe because the idiot homeowner said, you need to fix it for $12, right? And it's a $1,200 fix. Well, contextually, he did the best he could with the $12 budget on the $1,200 fix.
Yep.
So, talk a little bit about context and how you're getting there. I think you gave a great example with the example that you just said about how you got to that better relationship with the client, right? When you got to that, remind me.
The close rates?
The close rates. Yep. Yeah. Sorry. Mm-hmm. Yep. So give another example of just really deeply understanding context. You can use us if you want as an example too, if you'd like.
Well, I think anybody from a context perspective, I think the unlock really comes down into transcripts. I think that's the easiest way to get context, honestly, is to, you have the, what is it, Plod? Mm-hmm. The little device that connects on the back of your phone. If you wanted to carry it around with you, I mean, pretty much everybody's using tools like Otter and Granola, or, Record in Gemini if you're using Google Meets. Transcribe your meetings. There's context in every single conversation you have. Get that context now down into an agent to help make sense of these conversations you're having, synthesize the meaning behind these conversations, whether it's at a specific client or account level, or in the conversations you're having with your team, your sales team, your marketing team, whatever it is, and then build that into these Markdown files I was mentioning. So now you have this context reference that you can put into another agent or just into a folder, that when you are working with AI, it is grounded in that reality, that context of whatever it is that you're working on.
I'm going to say this for the average business user who maybe doesn't, maybe they've got an apprehension to jump into projects or agents or things like that. The more context that you can give in a chat window, even just in a standard chat search, the better.
That's the argument we're having right now, is the more may not be better because of the token use, because of the hallucination and those types of things. So there is a sort of a balance. So let's say we're in ChatGPT, we create a project. Most people think of projects just as folders and a way to organize your chats about specific topics.
Okay.
In reality, it's an opportunity to create an agent. So if you look in the top right-hand corner of a project, there's a few dots. There you can open a window that has instructions, and there you could give basically a permanent prompt to that folder. So every time you chat inside that folder, it's grounded in that prompt. Now I don't have to recreate that prompt every single time. I could use natural language, but that doesn't carry across project to project. You're isolated with
inside
that person.
That project.
So one of the things we created together was like a sales coach. So say I'm trained on Sandler, you could create a Sandler agent that is a prompt that says, hey, you're going to be grounded in Sandler rules. I want you to diagnose a meeting transcript, a sales transcript. I want you to look at a proposal I'm working on. Help me write a proposal. Whatever it is, it's going to be at least grounded in that methodology that You don't have to retype that chat every
Right.
single time. Now, what you don't want to do is dump 20 files or have, I think ChatGPT limits you to 8,000 lines.
It's 8,000 lines, yep.
You don't want that to be too large because it's going to get confused, just like we would in a
Is it
conversation.
characters or lines? I think it was characters.
I think it's characters,
Okay.
8,000 characters.
Yep.
Now, if
I
you're
remember I had to write a prompt builder that said, and keep this to under 8,000 characters.
Right. Now everyone's going to ask what a prompt builder is.
That's okay.
So
Let them call. Let's
Okay.
put the call us and we'll leave that like that.
Perfect.
If you want to know what a prompt builder is, you can call Curtis or Matt.
Yep. So that's a real key sort of unlock is in that context, you're going to get a more accurate response because it is grounded in some level of truth.
Mm-hmm.
So for us, our sales methodologies, how we sell, how we deliver, that's all sitting in files now that when I have a conversation or I upload a transcript from a call and I want help from AI on the next steps, it's not going to veer me away from where I'm taking the brand because Kaleidoscope now is grounded in a direction that I set as the owner, and I don't want to drift away from that. And you could easily emotionally, whether it's a deal I want to win, that maybe it isn't a good fit, that AI is going to come back and say, I can maybe tell Curtis, you might want this deal a little too much, but it's really not a good fit. Or Curtis, you haven't diagnosed first. You're pushing towards
I remember
delivering.
you had one the other day that you shared with me where you said it actually called you on it and said,
Yep.
Nope, you haven't gotten to this piece yet.
Yep. Well, I think the one
It was
I told
budget.
you that
It was budget.
Yep.
You didn't know what the budget was.
So that was using Sandler. The Sandler agent said, I asked it to help me create a proposal.
You're not there yet, buddy.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So Sandler would say, get tight on budget before you start throwing solutions at them.
Mm-hmm. There's two questions kind of on the same topic here. What's the danger of asking AI questions if it doesn't have the context to the answer?
Well, there's the statistical average.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it could be wrong, and then you spend money on wrong. So this was an example that's come to me recently is, let's say I got in a room with 100 executives, and I said, what's the one thing that's keeping you up at night? Or what's the one secret that you're holding close you're not willing to share? What's the anxiety? What's the pain? And I might get 100 different answers. I might get some that are all pretty close, but let's pretend all of them are my customer.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's open ChatGPT and start a prompt and say, what's the one thing that's keeping the 100 executives in this room right now? What's keeping them up at night? ChatGPT is not going to come back and say, I don't know who the 100 executives are that are sitting in your room right now. It's going to give me an answer.
Mm-hmm.
It might be statistically
close-ish.
Yeah, it might give me a pretty darn good answer. Now, if I put money behind that answer, say those 100 executives are my potential customer, and it gives me a decent answer, and I go after that with a marketing campaign, but that really wasn't the pain that those 100 people were feeling. I just wasted a bunch of money going in a direction that wasn't grounded in truth.
Sure.
So pause for a second, actually ask the question to your customers. What is their pain? How do you solve that pain? Now build your campaigns around that. Have AI amplify something like that. And I think you'll get closer to where you're trying to go.
How do you think that people should decide on this wait versus build?
Yeah, I don't think they should wait per se.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think if you're a company that's large enough and you can afford it and you can dedicate at least one person in the organization to learning AI, and I would probably have them in Claude if they're not in Claude right now,
Mm-hmm.
and not in Claude Desktop, I'd have them in Claude Terminal, learning Claude Terminal, probably VS Code, documenting, going department to department, division to division, learning the processes, documenting it, getting it all into Markdown files. And the great thing is Claude can do it for you. You just have to talk to it and get it organized properly. So I think every organization really should start there. And if you start with any department, you just start with marketing. It's maybe the easiest one to do it in, is to, hey, let's talk to some customers. Let's have some real conversations. Let's talk to stakeholders. Let's get some information. grounded in some truth, document how we sell, get that documented in truth, and now put AI on top of that. It's the system that's the variable. Like everybody's operating already at the AI level. So the example I gave recently was back in 2008 to 2010 was when WordPress came out. And prior to that, you had to have a developer in order to build you a website. When WordPress came out, everybody could build a website. Now, it was sort of the variable was not necessarily WordPress and the websites. It was the designer, the developer, the creativity you put to it, and the knowledge somebody within the organization to the content that went up on the website that made it good or not. The same is going to be true for AI. AI just created a level playing field. So then the question is, what are you going to feed that system? Who are the people that are using the system? What's the variables you're putting into it that's going to produce a better output? It's not just simply using the system.
What do you think about this whole thing of singularity, and we're all training up these AI agents so much and the LLMs so much that eventually it will get so smart that it will be able to contextually pull everything together and kind of quote unquote know everything. Are you worried about that anytime soon?
Well, my hope is, and I don't think this is possible, that AI is not going to replace the human connection, that it can't empathize the way a human can. It can't connect to people the way a human can. And so
even if it says the words, I think is what you mean, because people would argue right there. Well, no, mine told me that it knows how I feel right now.
Right. But could it give me a hug?
It cannot.
Right. So I think we could shift to a place, and this is sort of my hope with AI, that as human beings, we actually, maybe it frees us time that allows us to create human connections again. That maybe we were so busy in user interfaces and sitting in front of our computers that we lost some level of human connectivity. And maybe if AI takes some of that burden off of us and starts doing some of that work for us, that would actually free us up to have more human connectivity, spend more time with our coworkers, spend more time with customers, spend time with our families, spend time out in the garden with animals, those types of things. That's a better future that I think I'm hopeful for and looking forward to. And we'll have to see if that's where we go. But I think the industrial area, put us all behind machines. And so it separated us up from the rest of the world and from each other. And maybe AI can get us away from the machines and back to humanity.
Well, we do know that we're in the most disruptive technological era in the history of the world. But is it going to play out like you're saying, or is it going to play out to the negative? We don't know.
Yeah.
But I don't think I totally agree with you where you said, is waiting an option? Waiting overall is just not an option. You have to be cognizant of what's going on here, and you have to be deeper into the tools than you think you are today.
And I think you need to steward your budget as to where you're going to spend the money. And I just question tools versus organization first, because the tools can change. Anthropic could go bankrupt. We don't know. So if it's all built in a tool and that tool disappears, you just wasted all that money.
So I think what you're saying is that if you're going to invest in a tool, if you're going to invest in consulting around AI, to make sure that what you're doing is creating good portable roadways that could be used if the specific tool does go away.
100%.
So you're creating good practices with file structure, understanding what business operations could be smoothed out, and then remembering and respecting the security of things and making sure that everything has some level of guardrails around it as best it can, given the era that we're in.
Yep. You got it.
Oh, great. What else you want to share?
I don't know. Keep plugging away. I mean, this is an interesting time. I would say, don't be afraid. I think I certainly have spent a lot of time and a lot of money over the last year playing around with AI and trying to see how it's evolved. And if I would have been afraid of it, and sort of ignored it, I'd definitely be further behind as an organization. And I feel like a year or two from now, I'd be obsolete. And so I don't think you should be afraid of going obsolete, but I also don't think you should be afraid of the tools.
Yeah.
I think you should figure out, how does the tool fit into my organization? And start to map that out. But the mapping it out isn't just jumping right to the tool. It's taking your processes, figuring out something that's portable, getting smart people involved to help you figure out that process and how you're going to be a good steward of that technology, and then see what you can do. And I think a lot of people are going to come up with some really good ideas that they can make really fast and do development on, that the next 2 years are going to be really interesting. And it's going to be scary for a lot of the software companies that have, we're already seeing, I think HubSpot's stock dropped 50% in a month, went from $500 a share down to $250 a share, because I could wake up tomorrow and decide to build a CRM myself that matches my business. Now, I'm not advocating for that because of things we've already talked about, security and different things like that. But the possibilities are there. Sure. And maybe those companies were a little overvalued. And there's going to be this opportunity to say, you know what? These individual companies could have a software developer, a technology person, IT support, security support that helps them be good stewards of how they're using the technology and govern security and those types of things, but create some really cool things.
Yeah, you bet. Well, good stuff. Thanks for the insights. Yeah. Thanks for being here. I don't know if we should end with a yeehaw, or I'm just going to thank you for the.
We just do the hat tip.
I'm going to thank you for the rental of the hat here. I'll be giving it back here right afterwards. But thank you very much. I appreciate what you do for us, and thanks for sharing the insights with everybody.
I appreciate you having me on.
You got it.
All right.
This episode of the BLTNT podcast is sponsored by Auxium, business IT and cybersecurity designed to outsmart chaos. And powered by Juniper Networks. Automate your network with Juniper Networks and the Mist AI platform, the world's first AI-driven wired and wireless network.